From the backwoods of Virginia, this is Daniel Markham, the danielbmarkham.locals.com channel. Today I'm going to do an interview with a friend of mine, Tim Ottinger. Tim Ottinger. I've known Tim for, I bet you, 10 years, and I think we've only met maybe twice. But Tim started like I did doing programming stuff, and he became a tech coach like I did. So we have a lot of things in common, but we haven't spoken in quite a while. And of course, with COVID, got us all locked down and stuff. I said, Tim, dude, let's get online and shoot the breeze some. So, Mr. Tim.
Hey.
Hey, K Pasa. Yeah, we got this this is, I love you. Hey, it's cool stuff. We got to work on this so we can throw a ball back and forth.
Ooh.
So tell me, what have you been doing lately? Are you doing still some coaching from home, or how's the coaching stuff working with the COVID stuff?
Well, it's been pretty good actually. While some people are struggling, we've found that we're expanding our business. I'm with Industrial Logic, of course, and we just keep growing it. So early on, it looked pretty rough. I had a lot of stuff scheduled, and then COVID hit, and everybody said no travel, and we don't know if we're going to be able to afford anything. But we scrambled and came up with new offerings and new workshops, and too busy. I'm as busy as a one-armed paper hanger.
So if I remember correctly, I'm trying to think of your technical background. You came up, was it Ruby Java?
Oh, no, they weren't invented yet. I started in
Abacus.
79.
Do you do the abacus? And
yeah, I was an abacus programmer for several years. But it started out like in 79 in BASIC, and then shortly thereafter moved into C and C++ on Unix, well before Linux existed. And then, it got all weird because I went from C++, which you think, okay, well, the next step is Java. No, I went to Python, and then from Python to C# years later, and then from C# to Java, which guaranteed that I was not going to like Java very much. And then on from there to everything else.
I've had a couple Java projects, and every one of them I brought Eclipse up and I installed all this thing and all this stuff you do, and it was a dog. It was just, it was a painful thing for me.
Starting is really rough. I don't start very often in Java.
So I know you guys have sort of moved to the left with your consulting as far as, kind of what to build and how to set things up. Are you guys doing ATDD or?
That too. So just a little bit of everything. What we're doing mostly is working on technical skills for teams and working for product skills. And the thing that's really fascinating me these days is how that all works together, how to mix all of the different levels. And there's all kinds of philosophy and behavioral skills in that are just tasty and wonderful and joyful and frustrating as heck. So that's where I like to be too.
Yeah,
without leaving tech.
It seems that you start programming and you get kind of good at programming, you help other people program, and at some point it gets kind of fuzzy. Like, okay, I can do the programming thing. Like, what am I supposed to program? Like, how do I know I'm done? How do I know I'm coding at the right complexity level? You get into a lot of people problems, right?
That's right, and dealing with things like trust and responsibility and communication, and it just all gets. You just can't get by on technical skills alone.
No. So you guys, if I remember correctly, there was a book about using an industrial safety metaphor as far as a safe conversation, psychological safe space in teams. And the rest of it, I'm kind of drawing a blank on. Are you guys, you did that for a while? How did that?
Oh, no, that's still a big part of what we're doing. Okay. We're doing a technical excellence workshop. We keep doing these. It's a weird shop, man. It's a slow drip process. So what we're doing is slow dripping, 2 meetings a week for 8 weeks on this training. And a lot of what that's about is still, I think we have 3 weeks of it are about technical safety.
So you don't, I'm going to pick on you. You don't have one of those signs like 17 days without a hurt feeling or anything like that in front of the program. So far, 16 days, no hurt feelings. We're good.
Well, it's really, I think, more like having a hurt feeling isn't so bad.
Yeah, we went to this went this nonviolent communication stuff. You and I have been kind of around the merry-go-round a few times with various things. And I know if you've worked in a large corporation, people kind of reach the point eventually where they sort of say, "Oh no, it's just another thing, coming through." The safety thing you're doing, to me, actually seems like it makes a lot more sense than the NVC stuff. I like the NVC stuff, but the thing was, it seemed like it was abused to the point where it was preventing you from having difficult conversations.
Yeah, avoidance is very, very different from having safeties, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we always teach that a safety is anything that keeps a mistake from becoming a crisis.
Oh, I like that.
So it's really about robustness.
And sort of an anti-fragility thing as well,
Yeah.
I would admit. Yeah, one of the things I've noticed that it's sort of difficult to coach coaches on is the fact that we come in this from the outside and we sort of walk through a lot of these different types of conversations in our mind and we're kind of ready to go. We've seen a bunch of teams. A lot of times if you're in the team, the words don't come out the way they should. You say things and maybe you're being rude, you don't mean to be, or you're making a generalization that's not true. And so there has to be quite a bit, I guess, of forgiveness back and forth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that's very fair. And I think that's one of the things you see in the really great teams is that, there's some latitude and some grace given.
I've worked with teams that got along so well, they actually started picking on one another just to have something to do to kind of keep things moving along, right? It was.
Yeah. And knowing how far to push it and where to stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think probably the skill there where they were measuring each other out to see what kind of mood they were in and how far they could move things. It's dang. It's just not like programming at all. It's very complex.
That's very true.
So I'm going to try to take an extreme because I know we don't do this, but you don't do that thing where you fall down and you catch each other, or you go into the wilderness and kill a bear with your bare hands or anything.
No, no, no. Although that sounds really exciting.
It does. Yeah, I don't want to do. If you do that, it's fine. I'll take some pictures if you have you and the bear. It's good.
We have made paper airplanes before, but that's usually not to try to scare each other.
So let's talk a bit about games. I love games. I love having fun. Love joking around. And for a long time, and I try not to do the A word anymore. I try not to do coaching anymore. But for a long time, my main theory was get people laughing and then get them changing the way they sort of think about things, and then introduce the serious stuff. We did, of course, the spaghetti game and the various things you can do. What's your experience with that? I found that it was sort of a mixed bag. You could get people to sort of relax during the classroom, but then as soon as you got sort of anything that looked like real workout, they just kind of all locked up.
I've not been, maybe I'm not a really good practitioner of games, and this is just I have funny relationships with everything, I think.
Don't need your stinking games, man.
I keynoted at the Agile Games Conference one year, which is really funny because I'm a non-gamer. I don't do board games, table games, role-playing games, video games. I'm such a non-gamer. I do a couple tower defense games as fidgeting while I'm watching a movie because I can't sit still. And I don't do a lot of training games. I would really rather take a group of people and go into the work and learn there how to get along and how to be responsible and trusting. And but I went because one of the things I find is that there are a lot of risks with games. It's dangerous,
Yes.
You can upset people. You can trigger people on games in ways you didn't think. And I've seen people do things that I thought were just far too dangerous in a classroom. Asking questions like, what is the thing you're most afraid of? Yeah. I would never ask that. Yeah. You don't know who's been abducted, who might have been trafficked, who has been abused, who's been assaulted, who might have been shot or stabbed. I'm not going to play games with people's psyche. I'm not qualified to fix those things if I break them.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. It's I find the good teams are teams that sort of view work as a game. They're having fun, they're relaxed, they're joking. It's not serious. And you get that feeling, if you're playing a good game, you sort of get that feeling going, but it can be quite easy to lose. And as you said, there's all sorts of these landmines that it's not evident where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that other thing too, right? I went to, a guy was doing the Agile introduction and had a whole bunch of crazy games and spaghetti games and everything else. So I talked to the team afterwards. I said, "So what did you guys do today?" And, "Oh, we did this game. It was fun. This game." "Okay, what'd you learn?" Um, uh, we learned we're not as good as the other guys at spaghetti towers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, really, is that what you learned? And the instructor came out of the same room. "Oh, they learned so much today. They're really getting it."
Yes. So yeah, I'm going to share a little secret with you about technical coaches, and that we will happily both bullshit ourselves and one another with how successful we're doing, because I think but not having an immediate indicator of traction, you're kind of looking at people smiling, and they say oh, I learned a lot. It's difficult. Now I'm going to cut to this because I know we're headed here anyway. This is fun talking about games. Mob programming. So mob programming just sort of bypasses the game thing and says, okay, how do we actually start making things happen at a technical level?
Right.
I've been doing mobs for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Probably right after I saw Woody at Agile 2009 or whatever do the presentation. It is one of the things that was completely counterintuitive. For those of you who don't know what it is, mob programming is just bring the whole team into one room. You have a navigator who's typing. He's not coding, he's just typing. And everybody else, the driver, I'm sorry. And then you have maybe somebody doing research. I'm thinking of TDD. But then everybody else has to agree on what's being typed. And what that does is it forces immediate focus on all the technical details you need to make your solution happen, which you're able to avoid in all the games and all the PowerPoints that you do in the entire. Once you start mobbing, it gets, okay, oh, we have to actually know how to do this, and how do we name variables, how do we check things in. It becomes real.
It's true.
So have you just given up on all games? You're just not a fun person at all? You just sit at home and like throw things at a tower, or you pick on your cat or something?
I tried fun once, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, I tried having fun once. It was terrible.
Yeah, I just didn't care for it. So yeah, usually I don't really play games. I like doing stuff. I like cooking and things, but I just don't really enjoy playing games.
Hey, so let me, I think probably the last game I played was Factorio, which don't save yourself now, Tim. It's like programmer crack, and I haven't played it in a year or two. It's a simulation of a factory that you keep adding things on until you. It's like I said, don't go there. What the hell was I going to go with this thing? So,
mob programming is a game, right?
What's a game?
Mob programming.
It is like I was saying earlier. I mean, really. The thing is, it's all games. What we used to try to teach with the jokes and all the rubber chickens and everything was, hey, have fun, relax. Sort of don't take this too seriously. That thing of drawing in that you mentioned trying to avoid, that's the killer. People sort of cover up because they're worried about how they look or what the boss is going to say. And suddenly nobody's talking to one another, right?
Right. And, they're ranking, they're comparing themselves to each other. All those kinds of ugly things.
So, do you do programming at home?
Oh yeah.
Okay, what you been coding on? What's fun for Tim?
So one of my buddies got hold of me and said, "Hey, you know what? We never program together anymore. We're always off at different gigs, and so let's do it." So we set aside time every morning, and we decided that we would write this code the slowest way anyone has ever written code. So there's no schedule, there's no deadline. We do whatever we want to. We change our mind if we want to, but we just start off and we start writing. Oh, here's an idea. Let's get a test. Let's get some code. Let's refactor it. Oh, I don't like where this is going. Let's change our direction to fix and we've been at it for, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks at an hour at a time. And in an hour, sometimes we've written 1 or 2 tests and 3 or 4 lines of code. But we are like taking the joy of just picking it apart down to the nth level and really understanding where the other person is coming from and their thought processes. And to me, this is fun. This is a great time. And then I'm also joining in with a group of people every Friday night for, it is not a serious mob. It is a bunch of people just looking at the code and trying to make sense of something that was, one of us had written alone with an awful lot of primitive obsession and detail, and decided, hey, let's refactor this together. And it's just a great blast. So cool. Yeah, I like programming for fun.
I do too. I find programming to be relaxing and humbling at the same time, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times if you're using somebody's libraries, I was using a guy's library earlier today. The guy was a console pretty print for .NET basically, and I'm looking through his code and I'm thinking, okay, how is he thinking of doing his solution? You know, he's coding in C sharp, he's doing some O things, and I found his paradigm didn't hold. Like he started a paradigm one way and then he used it a different way down here. And then it's like, but it was fun. It was fun because I realized how he was thinking as he was coding. And then I realized how he must have switched at some point and just didn't go back and fix everything else. Yeah, I really do. I enjoy programming. It's difficult to find people that you can code with that are relaxed. So I'm kind of envious of you.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of people when they're programming with other people, they're little programming big with other people. And it's hard for them. And it's, unless you're really close, that's a tough call. But if you're programming with other people, everybody's focused in on the work, it's really not hard at all. It's just getting past the point where you're aware that there's somebody, sitting, right here on my side who's watching what I'm doing. And I wonder if they're evaluating me, and I wonder if this is different than they would have done. And then, keeping my emotional distance from my partner.
Yes.
So that, when we start evaluating and thinking about the people that we're with too much, we actually lose track of the work and can't get anything done, and it's fairly miserable.
There's an interesting ego thing that comes across when you've written a book or you've done public speaking or whatever. I find there was kind of a gap. Once I started actually sort of announcing do X and not Y, and this is better, A is better than B, then it's almost like I sort of programmed myself to sort of defend those positions. And then when I work with others, like for instance, I did some programming with Bob and Mr. Bob and James Grinning about a couple of years back. And they were trying to learn F sharp. And as they started coding, they were doing all this sort of butt ugly, stupid stuff that made sense to them because they were thinking of this in terms of zombies and they were doing, but it wasn't functional. And Tim, I couldn't say anything. I kind of kept quiet because I felt like, I don't know, like there was just, I don't know if it was ego or whatever, but I was interested in how they were going to code. And more to the point, I didn't want to take the way I was thinking and sort of shove it onto them. That wasn't my programming, by the way. That was sort of me using them as lab rats, as I told them later. But it becomes, I think, doesn't it become kind of difficult when you're taking a position on, whatever, Hungarian variable names or whatever, and then you start with somebody that's not doing it the right way, right?
And usually it's them being afraid. I mean, clean code, I was working with Bob and James at the time, and it's an anthology book, and everybody wrote some chapters of it, and I did the one on naming, and people were kind of afraid. I would get together, and they somehow got it in their heads that I wrote perfect names to begin with every time, and
Yes.
I don't. I never have. Quite often I don't know what to call something, and I'll call it poop. Poop is my favorite temporary variable name. Test. What are we testing here? Oh, we don't know. We haven't got into that yet. Test poop. Okay, write some code. Oh, I know what we're testing. Go back and rename it. And they're like, but I thought you were supposed to be like a naming guru. And it's like, well, I didn't set myself up to be a naming guru. I just like a good name when I see one. And I'm my way to getting one.
Forgive me, I'm honestly not trying to plug my own stuff. I'm just trying to relate to you by telling stories from my own experiences. When I wrote the InfoOps books, I had to come to grips with the fact that my goal wasn't to teach people how to program, it was to teach people how to think about programming. And so I wrote one chapter that did, here's how you do a time tracking system using functional blah, 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 blah. And after I wrote that chapter, I was like, no, hang on, this isn't right, because I went through it 5 or 6 times and it looks pretty, and I just sort of did a little walkthrough. And so the next chapter, I'm like, well, here's how I actually code. And it was just blah, 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 and it didn't read so well, Tim, but that's kind of the way things really occur when you're working on it.
It's something about being honest, right? When you're honest about how you work and you're willing to show your vulnerability at work. And so it's not like going around crying. It's just being upfront about who you are and how you work.
So have you, have you done any Twitch program? You know, that's a thing that you get on Twitch and you stream and you program live for 4 hours. And
Nope.
yeah, I don't know about that.
I know that Twitch is like a gamer's platform generally, and then people are using it for other things. But I don't, being a non-gamer, I wouldn't have had an account, and I haven't popped over to look yet.
As I understand it, there's quite an audience of people. I would think tens or hundreds of thousands of people around the world, oddly enough, that will come by if you have a good programming channel and watch hours and hours of you programming. And the thing is, I'm just not smart enough to come up with hours and hours. After 10 minutes, I'm ready for like a walk or a nap or something. I only got like 4 smart things to do every day, and if I run through all 4 in the morning, that's just. Have you been doing the Pomodoro stuff? Have you talking about pacing?
Oh yeah. So I started. That's the thing that I've been really playing with, because I was always interested in what makes us think what better and produce better. And I kept finding that people were getting like a 10 a.m. sag and a 2 p.m. sag, and they'd blame it on breakfast or lunch or hungry or whatever. And I got to thinking, I don't think that's it at all. And then I read some articles about how important it is if you could take a nap, how much more you'd get done every day. And of course, managers won't have it because it's not worth their jobs. If the VP walked through and saw the people taking a nap, they'd be out. But then I got to thinking about what can you do. And Pomodoro, there was an article, The Power of 48 Minutes. It was pretty good. 48 minutes work, 12 minutes break. And I got to thinking, well, what if we did that? So I started setting up, 10-minute breaks every hour. And if I take a 10-minute break every hour, I don't notice 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Sometimes I have to be reminded to go to lunch. And 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock feel the same. I don't have an afternoon slump. I don't get tired. I pop something to eat. I'm not hungry. I don't have to slow down. And I found this with teams that were doing more work in the morning than they usually do in an entire day.
Yes.
By taking a 10-minute break. But this is counterintuitive. Bosses, they see you going for your third break, and they're like, are we ever going to get any work done today? And it's like, we've already finished today's work. We're starting tomorrow's work. And like, I don't believe it. And then in the afternoon, oh, you guys are taking a break again? And people are like, okay, I'm not going to do it because it's going to damage my role success, right? You got to be successful in your role. And people are afraid to do things that are productive if they don't look like work.
I was brought on as a consultant to I think it was an EDS contract. They had about 80 people, maybe 40 or 50 people, and they were having problems with IDLs and Visual Basic and C#. So I came in sort of as a guru dude, right? Mm-hmm. And I sat right across from the company's manager who would manage the contract, and he would yell at people. He would really kind of berate them, and he did it once to me, and I just about walked at that, but I backed off. I'm like, well, maybe he's having a bad day. So he didn't do it again. And the last day I was there, I'm like, Rob, dude, I almost walked out of the office for good when you yelled at me. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, Daniel, he said, I don't know what else to do, and this seems to get people to react to me. And I was like, wow, how honest is that? That didn't fix the problem, but at least it was an honest response.
Yeah, and that's a place to begin, right? It's a shame it was the last day.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I wouldn't do that now. That was 15 years ago. Last big gig I had, people yelled at me. I went in the CTO's office and said, "Dude, you're a great guy, but this isn't working." And he said, "You're not about to start coaching me." Or I'm like, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. You're now receiving coaching." Yeah, he did. He didn't take too well, but he dialed it back. He did that. He did the little. We had at some point we learned. I'm by we. I'm just saying these assholes. We learned. We learned that some part of management is some like some barn theater, like some sort of community. Yeah. That there's this performance thing we do, whatever, and it has to. And once we teach a manager to do that, you kind of have to, as a consultant. You correct them, you model the correct behavior, and you just kind of suffer through like the crappy acting. It's like, okay, that's good. That's okay. I'll give you like 3 out of 10 for that, but you should have cried a little bit at the end. Or something. We have to meet. Yeah, we have to meet people where they are. You bring up a good subject about, calling that manager out on this. Have you had a lot of sort of confrontations with management? You mentioned the managers not liking people taking the break, and
Oh, I don't think you can be in this business without finding some people who are a little undertrained for the work. So we had one guy who had come in, and I guess he had this no nonsense attitude that they admired. Well, he was pretty harsh. So he went in, and a team wasn't meeting his expectations. So he fired them all, fired them outright,
wow, wow.
hired new people. And then he liked to tell the new people, if you don't do what I like, I'll go hire somebody who will. I fired the last team. I'll fire you too. And as these people were all H-1Bs,
Oh my God! Oh,
that
wow.
was not an idle, minor, trivial threat. And these people were working insane hours, and they were afraid to do anything that would possibly jeopardize their position or put them behind on a schedule. And of course, the expectations were out of whack. And there's just no coaching in that space. There was no room to breathe, to learn, and so there was that. But usually, what I see is just people who don't know what they don't know. We had a fellow who was known for being just really, really difficult. The teams complained about him. He was just so awful and so stressy and such a stress puppy. He was making them all nuts. And so we worked together a little bit, and we realized what it was he was just undertrained. So he had 50 individuals he was trying to manage. And I said, well, these people are in 5 teams, and we have this agile ideal about autonomous atomic teams that maybe you don't need to manage 50 individuals. Maybe you just need to manage 5 team people. What if each team was a person, and you assigned work to the team, and you checked up with the team on the work, and see how that would go? And he thought about it for a while, and I left for a month or two. When I came back, the team was like, what did you do? I think you broke him. I said, what do you mean? Oh, he's great. He stopped micromanaging us, and we're getting so much more done now. We're getting things finished and on schedule. And it's the way he acts, it's like he trusts us, but we're not sure if it's a trick or not.
Bring back. Where did the real guy go to? Bring him back so we can make sure he's not.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
this is scary. And it was just, he was doing so much.
I had a director beg me once. We were in a situation where I was coaching several teams, and I was trying to bring about some change, and I had mentioned things that had to change, and the director and her staff had shot me down. I'm like, okay, we'll keep working, see if we can figure out how to make this work. But then she just came and said, look, just tell me straight out. Tell me, just hit me with the, and, Tim, to this day, I'm not sure what I should have done then. I didn't. I held back, and I didn't hold back because I was a weasel. I had held back because I felt like by going slower, I could make a difference. Whereas if I just hit her up front, she'd put the wall up, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can make that kind of adjustment to somebody by giving them a metaphor, coach the teams instead of the people. Sometimes, a lot of times, people are undertrained, but they don't know they're undertrained. So, we have these bags of tricks we use, metaphors and ideas. Mm-hmm. They may have already looked at this thing and said, oh, well, this is just never going to work because blah, 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 blah. And so we come in and we start mentioning these little bags of tricks. And we're like, no, wait, now come on. I read that in, CIO magazine last year. And this is, so it's, I guess consulting is kind of the art of telling somebody they're wrong about something they've already decided about, right? I mean, really it is, because if they knew already, they would go do it, and if they could learn it, they would learn it. So you're really you're going to have to go over ground that they've gone over before and say, no, wait a minute, dude, this actually doesn't work the way you thought it did.
I got an undeserved reputation as an optimist one time, and I'll tell you how it happened, and it's really straightforward. The team got into some hot water, and they were, struggling. It was a tough time, and I was just grinning. I was relaxed and I was grinning, and we would talk about things, what to do next. And they said, man, it was really great. You were so calm, so mellow. Everything, just, you never really lost your temper with us, no matter how weird things got. And that was really great. And, it's really been a wonderful thing. And I hated to tell them the truth.
What was the truth?
The truth is, when everything they're doing is working, they don't listen to the coach.
Yes.
But when they get into the muck, then they're ready to start hearing some alternative ideas and alternative explanations for why things are the way they are. So suddenly I could make a difference. I was there at the teachable moments. And of course, that's good for me. For the coach,
Yes.
when things are not so grand, I would never make them go wrong.
Right.
But when the things they're doing aren't working so well, they start being interested in what can we do instead.
Okay, but okay, you're starting to throw these boilerplate answers back at me, and I'm going to challenge you on some of this stuff because you're right. It's not that you're wrong. Okay, it's that we have traction. Coaching, consulting's like milk. You buy the milk, you use the milk. After a while, the milk's no good. Even if it's still fine, you just, oh, that's been here too long. So don't we have to, as change agents, sort of gauge how much how much traction we have in the snow, and sort of, because I can't walk into a team and tell them the things they all need to improve. You're right. They have to realize the things, but they just experience the symptoms. The symptom is my boss is fussing at me. I'm working 80 hours a week. Blah blah blah. I've got the causes. I've got 15 causes. Trust me, you don't want to hear 15 causes. You're going to go run screaming into the night. So how do you gauge what to tell them first? What's your priority list when you try to, triage? How do you do that?
So I usually would never walk into a room and know what they need to change. So I start there. Right?
Yes, I am ignorant. I know nothing. Okay. Yes.
So
welcome to the Earth. Welcome to planet Earth, Tim. We're bipedal here, and we also work with computers. Now, come on. You walk into a place that the code's not testable, the customer's not happy, there's no customer in the room. There are things that we can see walking in. You can't claim ultimate ignorance. I'm ignorant as to the ultimate causes. I can see, even from my standpoint, I can see things like not testable code and such. But those are actually not the reasons these things exist. These things exist because of other things, right?
Yeah. There's always some reason, something that holds the current system in place, and you don't know what they've tried and haven't tried. And so I usually try to go in and join them and participate with them in the work they normally do and see how it's going. And somewhere along the line, you do kind of feel Gall. John Gall wrote in Systemantics, he referred to energy, ANERGY, right? The amount of energy towards making change. And he said that the amount of energy in the universe is a constant, right? So you kind of have to know where it is at the moment, and you can't just change all the things, right? So you start to find ways to fit things into the flow. I know you do this.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you're going to take a look, and it's like, well, what are the problems that we can't step on right now, and what are the ones we can step on, and what seeds do we plant for next month versus what do we do right now?
So you're asking me what I do. I think it's fair. Flip it around. I think it's fair enough. What I like to see happen is to try to find a change that, if made, will lead to other changes.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I was working with Mike Bowler, 6-7 years ago, and we were talking about the DevOps pipeline. And if you can track code change to code release, and say, guys, this should be, an hour or two, and right now it's 2 years. Just having that conversation and acknowledging that that's important drives a lot of, why don't we have tests? Why don't we have a pipeline? You can sort of go from there. Whereas some other things, you sort of make a change with it, it just sort of falls and doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. What are the keystone changes, right?
What are the feedback loops? See, I think one of the things we do, and I've done when I talked about the games, we focus on technique. And technique's important to bring about change, but we really should be talking about what feedback loops we're setting up so the people themselves can TDD, ATDD, DevOps pipeline. How can they continue to judge their own work quality, right?
Yeah. And, what is the context in which different habits could thrive?
Yes.
And frankly, a lot of shops, they don't have the breathing room for a change right away.
And that's why you can't come in with a 15 change. It's not that they're technically things you can't observe. It's that these also are, they see the symptoms of the boss yelling at them, working overtime. You see the symptoms of poor practices and all these other things, but they're all just symptoms. You have to really go back to attitude, safety, right?
Yep. Yep. And it's so you go in and the boss wants somebody to join their mission, right? They have a mission. It's probably a good mission. And then you go to the team and the team wants someone to join their side and help them with their mission. And I think that a lot of times people walk in and they want to reproduce the great team they had 3 years ago or 12 years ago.
Yes, yes.
They want to reproduce the company they had or the environment they had, and they come up and they hit you with the delta. Here's the diff of all the things that aren't what I wanted. And there's just no way that you can get there that way. Each great team is great differently.
It is. I don't think we necessarily help one another as coaches or consultants. I remember I was working with some teams that were doing large scale agile, where we used boards, we used visual information radiators, and I was coaching the teams. Guys, look, what we need to do is when we have a problem, we need to surface that in writing. We don't have to solve it, but we need to make it visible to other people who might be able to solve it for us.
Yeah.
And so the team started doing that, and one of the other consultants said, "Oh, you guys are teaching managers to do a Gemba walk," and then all this other kind of came in. And it was like, no, it's just, here's this one thing you can do, and then do this other little thing. But we want to, as consultants, you talk about guys trying to reproduce the last team. Consultants want to pull off the little recipe book for fixing things, and this will fix you, right? And that rarely ever works either.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the dysfunctions are the same, but the answers might be different, and the way they become great might be different, the paths. So
we have met the enemy, and he is us.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's really hard to tell, so I am not a do-it-yourselfer. I really am not. But we had a problem in our house. And basically we got a leak in a water line, and it rotted out the subfloor under the refrigerator. So you have to replace the subfloor. There's 2 subfloors, 2 layers. Replace the subfloor. Well, if you do that, you had to take up all the flooring around it. So now we have to put down new flooring. Well, we can't get the old flooring. We have to buy new flooring. So it has to cover the whole floor. And by the way, while we're at that, right? So this is how that's been my year. That's been my, it's not a hobby. It's my forced labor. But one day I was out there, I'd taken the jigsaw, and I don't actually have appropriate tools for the work. And I've learned about that too, but I'm trying to cut a straight line with a jigsaw, which is a thing unto itself. Yeah. So I'm following the line as best I can, and I can't get the saw to move forward. And it's like, what is going on? And it's like, I stop and I look underneath the board. There's nothing blocking. I thought maybe I hit the sawhorse thing, nothing there. And I try again, and it freezes at the same place. And I'm looking at this 3 or 4 times. And then I realize I'm sitting on its cord. Well, a lot of teams are sitting on their own cord.
Yeah.
And they don't know it yet. And when they find out, it's going to be a little embarrassing.
It's funny. I had a team I was working with once that I forget, the project manager or scrum master was having some kind of problem. I don't remember what the problem was, but I remember that I was coaching several teams, and I was like, I'm going to be here every morning an hour early, since you come in early anyway, and let's just kind of kick around and talk some. And I had no agenda or plan or anything at all. But somehow or another, it kind of worked. And I guess sometimes you can stuff off the cord, right? That it was the Christmas Vacation, where the guys puts the lights up on the roof and everything, and they throw the switch, and so it can start working without you really knowing what happened either, right?
Yeah, yeah. Was it Esther? Yeah, it's Esther Derby and Don Gray talk about the whole center, enter, change, turn. Yeah, center, enter, turn, right? About, you make sure you know who you are and what you're about. You enter a team. That's actually a thing. It's not like you just walk in the door and assume authority. You enter the team. And I think that's a great thing. You meeting with people without an agenda, getting to know them was a way of entering their space politely. And then turn, of course, is that other piece where suddenly you start to have the rapport and the energy towards some keystone pivot that makes a difference. And I think that's really great stuff. I don't know anybody else who's ever formulated that the way Esther and Don did, by the way.
The people I know that are fans of always ask permission like for stuff, and I thought I learned that just by watching other coaches. They would say, "Okay, is it okay if when I see whatever, I can speak about that?" And I just thought, wow, that's a really cool way to meet people, you know?
Yeah. You started with talking about the psychological safety bit. One of the things that plays into that, I didn't know about this until I started working with Ashley Johnson. It didn't really dawn on me. Is that when we have an agreement, then there's an invitation to a challenge, right? So you said, hey, 6:30 on Tuesday, let's get together. If I didn't show up at 6:38, you have every right to challenge me.
Yes.
Right? Because we had an agreement. And the challenge is, Tim, are we doing this or not? Now, luckily, I wasn't that far behind. So I think we're pretty close, but we're pretty much on. But the idea was
6:41. It's I don't know why we couldn't do 6:41.
I like that one. But that's the idea that when there's an agreement, we can now challenge, right? So, and one of the things I'll do early on is I'll try to make an agreement with the team. For instance, I'm trying to get over saying you guys. I really am trying to get past it. I'm trying to try you all, folks, friends, whatever else, anything. And so I have them, an agreement that please help me get over.
Yes.
You don't even have to agree with it, but if you would please help me get over it, I would like to change.
Yes.
And then I'll say, so how are you guys doing? And somebody go, you guys, and I'll go,
Yeah, got me again.
How are you all doing? And they'll challenge me, and they'll see that it's okay to challenge me. Yes. And then at different times, other people will say, you know what, I'm trying to get past this, and maybe, we could challenge that. Just let me know. And I think that's the kind of vulnerability we're really looking for is, I'm trying to be better. Can you help me? Can you help me catch myself not doing better and make it right?
The first time I did mob programming, or maybe one of the first few times, I was working with a team of leads. And so each person was lead over a team or two. Only about 4 or 5 of them. We're so small, regular sized team. So we start mobbing on this work, and 2 things occurred to me. First of all, I hadn't worked in the environment we were coding in, which, hey, the music plays, we're going to dance. And secondly, these guys had, but they didn't know how to use the tools, the IDE. They didn't know, they're a key part. They'd been a lead. I don't know. I have no idea how they didn't know. So we were kind of stuck in a spot where, nobody knew much of anything. And so you as a coach, you have to say, okay, guys, look, I don't know this, right? Let's go figure it out and not get hung up on the fact that the coach here, blah, 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 doesn't know. And they were okay with that, but then we sort of had to say, well, this is our agreement. How about we all be this way, because maybe some different ones are having problems. And that became a little more uncomfortable when it sort of reflects back on what you might consider to be your job, how well you're doing your job.
Yeah. I think that
I was going to say, the thing we teach these I'm just one thing, because I kind of got a good rant going on now. We teach programmers in college to work on their own, to excel, to become a MacArthur Grant Award. We have all these little things we give to people to be super cool, super smart people, and then we stick them in a group of 5 or 6 people, and they're still stuck in that, okay, I've got to be the super smart person kind of mode, and that's just not who we need anymore.
It's true. I've had people who objected to pair programming, and their objection was, last year, this would have been an ethics violation.
Yes. A security violation. You can have 2 people using the same keyboard. I've heard that as well.
Yeah. So when I was in school, that was an ethics violation, to share the work, to do it together. You had to do your own work, because otherwise, how could they grade you individually and certify that you are qualified for your work if you didn't do it alone? How do they know which part was yours? And of course, in business, I don't know why that would ever matter even a little bit. Is the work getting done? Is it good? Well, then the team did it. That's fine. Well, how do I know which one to fire? Ask them. Probably one of them will volunteer. Fire me.
Or the flip side, you see people say, hey, we're having problems. We need to hire really smart people in these technologies to fix the problem we have. It's like, probably your problem isn't the technology smart people problem. You probably got something else going on there somewhere.
Well, I'm trying to avoid 8 rants right now.
Like I said, we've been through the same mud together. I know this.
Yes, we have. there is so clearly one of the problems that we get into is you just mentioned people not knowing their tools, right? And so you don't know your tools, you don't know your stack, you don't know your operating system, you barely know the language, and you're trying to get a result around, and really you don't really understand what the customers want out of this thing anyway. But you're going to build your piece, and people muddle through time after time after time, and they get decent enough at muddling through that they're kind of convinced that's the way it's supposed to work. But at the other hand, the other thing that drives me nuts is we need to hire really super smart, excellent, superhuman people to do the work. And the reason is because they're asking people to do super smart, superhuman, unrealistic things. And by the way, usually the system is predicated on them being so super smart and super excellent that everything works out exquisitely to plan, never a variation. And if not, it's probably because the people aren't good enough.
Okay, I'm up to 3 rants I've got on the stack right now. I tell you the thing. This is what I've noticed. I hate to say this. If you start your own company, it's just you and another guy, and you're trying to struggle with the customers, and the code's a mess, and you're doing the best you can, and you're focusing on solving problems for people because you need money. You have to solve problems to make this thing work. At some point, you grow and grow, and maybe you got 20 people. And now you're just you come in fresh to a 20-person company, and you're a regular programmer. You become a lead, and this magic thing happens, Tim. It's called a meeting, and you go to the meeting and you report on how things are going, whatever. And while you're at the meeting, people don't ask you questions about like how to name variables or do typed error handling or anything. So you're having a meeting with Gantt charts, and you get puppets, and so you come back, and the more you work at this, the more meetings you get. And then if you're really good at this, within a year or two, you get me made an architect or something, and you just go to meetings all the time, maybe draw little UML diagrams, and you are the person making things so complicated that we have to hire these really complicated people back here. It's sort of the Peter principle gone wild more than anything.
Yeah. It's again, stacking them all up. There's the expectations bug, right? So, I would expect that anyone I hire should be able to do marketing and sales and programming, and in their spare time run a couple of teams and be a scrum master. That's reasonable. And then I hire people, and I just can't find people who are good enough to do this job. I need better people. And how long can you go with a revolving door before it dawns on you that there's no human being that could fill that role? Your expectations are so far outside of reality that, but you see the difference between here's what I expected and here's what I got. Reality is that my expectation wasn't met. Obviously, only one possibility. Reality is wrong.
I find that companies run into problems. Good companies solve these problems, automate the solution, and never touch the solution again. They move on. Bad companies give the problem, they put a title on the problem, they give it to a person, and then they move on. And every time you give the title to the problem and hand it to a person, you've just increased the overall complexity of the entire organization. And you do that even 4 or 5 times, you can have a mess. And some orgs have been, have 100 different little tiny things that nobody else knows what's going on. And you're right, then they expect everything to work together, because back in the day when they started with 10 people, they could do all those things, right?
Mm-hmm. And, this is... expectation is this is the curiosity space that I keep going on about all the time, right? The difference between what you expect and what happens is a curiosity space. It's the thing you didn't know. It's what you weren't aware of or didn't predict and plan. It's a cash miss, right? And people start off and then they have a problem. Well, they didn't expect that problem. I know what the problem was. The problem was Jeanette. Fire Jeanette. The problem was out the door.
Yes, it's that Ottinger guy, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll hand it off to Daniel, right? So when Daniel gets it, then suddenly we find out that Daniel's no better than Jeanette. We need to kick Daniel out and get somebody else. Let's get Rakesh.
You ever go to a team meeting where somebody brings up a problem, everybody instantly breaks eye contact and looks like somewhere with their shoes or something? Well, look at the time, hey. Yeah, I'm not here this week. Sorry, I can come.
Lower the hat.
Yeah.
Raise the screen. Put up the shield.
Because you're right, it becomes a firing squad. It's like, oh, okay, oh, boom, Tim, right?
Yeah, it must be Tim. And then, so, it's the idea of a curiosity space is there's a story there that we need to dive into that we
Yes.
could learn from if we would bother. But sometimes we're so busy judging reality that we never consider that our expectations were off. Also,
I
Ashley's favorite one is this. A lot of times we have expectations that we've never told anybody about,
yes. Yes.
and they don't know. They have no way. There was never an agreement.
Yes.
So, I just expected you to come in a three-piece suit.
Yes.
Well, I didn't know you wanted a three-piece suit. You never said anything. Well, you should have known. Well, how should I have known that? What's
Yeah.
I don't know how I can satisfy your unspoken expectation.
That's that's an interesting thing. I was going to make a counterpoint.
Yeah.
In computer programming, we're always sort of aware of what the code does because we can look at the code. And sometimes it may be obscure and maybe badly written or named or whatever, but you can always at some point figure out the complexity. But with people and orgs and roles and all that stuff, you're right. I can say, hey, Tim, go handle hiring for the next quarter. And I may have 400 things that I mean when I say that, and you may only hear maybe 3 of those.
Yep.
And there's just no debugging process anymore. Tim, I could keep you all night, dude. This has been a hoot, man.
It's so nice to talk to you. Nice to see you. And I love the hat. The hat's a killer hat.
Thank you. I had to wear the best hat today. So hang with me about 30 seconds and I'll finish recording. I'll be right back, all right?
Okay.
Where are you? So that was Tim Ottinger. I'm Daniel Markham. I appreciate you guys dropping by. You can come by for Old Guys Ran It Programmers again sometime. I had a real hoot. Thanks for coming. I will see you on the internet.